You take everything personally, don't you? Every glance, every word, every silence. It feels like a mirror held up to your worth. You don't realize it, but you've built your identity out of reflections that were never yours. Someone frowns and you crumble. Someone withdraws and you rot in self-doubt. Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But you never pause long enough to ask, what part of you needs to bleed every time someone speaks? You've mistaken perception for truth, emotion for evidence, pain for identity. You are enslaved by interpretation. Every opinion becomes a blade, every whisper a wound. The danger isn't that people talk, it's that you believe them. Because when you take everything personally, you hand over your psyche like an open wound to those who never earned it. And soon you can't tell where you end and they begin. This is not sensitivity, it's self-erasure. And if you keep listening the way you do now, you won't just hear others, you'll vanish inside their voices. Number 1, the invisible prison of perception. You live inside a hall of mirrors and every reflection cuts a little deeper. Someone's tone shifts, their eyes flicker, their breath changes. Your mind begins its autopsy. What did I do? What did they mean? You tear yourself apart looking for a crime you never committed. This is the ego's trick. It cannot stand uncertainty, so it invents offense. It translates the chaos of the outer world into a personal wound. Each gesture becomes evidence. Each silence becomes a verdict. You were never taught to sit still inside ambiguity, were you? You learned early that approval was oxygen, that love depended on reading the room before it burned you. So now you breathe through other people's moods. You inhale their disapproval until it becomes your heartbeat. Jung called this inflation of the ego, when the self expands to absorb every external impulse until it collapses under its own weight. You mistake awareness for control, but it's addiction. You're addicted to interpreting yourself through their reactions. The more you observe, the less you exist. The more you care, the less you feel. You've built a cathedral of meaning around every fleeting expression, and you pray at the altar of interpretation. Yet none of it is real. It's projection, yours and theirs, tangled like smoke. You think they're judging you, but they're just lost in their own reflections, the same way you are. This is the invisible prison of perception, 1,000 doors made of glass, and every time you look out, you only see yourself bleeding back. When you start realizing this, something terrifying happens. You begin to see that most of your pain was imagination wearing other people's faces. That's when detachment begins, not as coldness, but as clarity. You stop needing every look to mean something. You stop mistaking noise for truth. Say it with me, comment below. I refuse to bleed for their opinions. Because that's the first incision, the cut that separates who you are from what they see. Remember, not everything that touches you deserves to enter you. Most of it is just wind against glass. And when you finally stop taking every breath of that wind as an attack, you'll hear beneath the noise something you've forgotten. Your own quiet pulse, untouched, waiting to become real again. Number 2, the projection trap. You think people see you, they don't. They only ever see the battlefield inside themselves. Every insult they throw, every accusation, every cold silence, it's not about you. It's a confession disguised as conversation. Jung called this the projection of the shadow, the psyche's desperate attempt to vomit out what it cannot accept within. And you, the sensitive one, you catch it like it's truth. You turn their poison into prayer. You analyze the tone, the choice of words, the timing, as if decoding the sacred language of your own worth. But their judgment isn't insight, it's exorcism. They cast their hidden fears onto you so they don't have to face them in the mirror. That's why some people are triggered by your calm, your light, your silence. It reflects what they've buried. When they call you arrogant, it's their own smallness speaking. When they call you cold, it's their own unhealed need for control. You're not under attack, you're witnessing exposure, yet you absorb it anyway, making their demons your tenants. You host their shame, polish it, call it your personality. You have mistaken empathy for responsibility. You're not supposed to hold what isn't yours. You are supposed to recognize it, name it, and hand it back to its rightful owner. with detachment, not revenge. Because the moment you internalize their projections, you imprison yourself in their unfinished story. That's why Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You've been living inside other people's fates, mistaking their chaos for destiny. But tonight that ends. You start to see that not everything directed at you belongs to you. The words that sting the most are usually echoes of someone else's buried guilt. Let them keep their ghosts. Whisper it quietly and mean it. Comment below, I return their shadows to them. Because once you do, their power dissolves. The world stops feeling like a courtroom and starts looking like a reflection pool. You realize most people are just mirrors walking around, trying to blind others so they don't see themselves. And now, you've learned to look without absorbing, to see without surrendering. That is the beginning of freedom. Number 3, the unconscious wound. You weren't born taking things personally. You learned it. You learned it the first time your silence was mistaken for defiance, the first time your tears were called weakness, the first time love arrived with conditions written in invisible ink. You were small, defenseless, scanning faces for safety, measuring tones like weather patterns, learning that peace depends on how well you predict other people's storms. That's where it began. The hypervigilance, the emotional radar that never turns off. Jung would have called it a complex, a cluster of unhealed memories orbiting a single wound. It hides deep in the unconscious, whispering, if they are angry, you must have done something wrong. And so you grew up decoding emotions that weren't yours, translating chaos into self-blame. You called it empathy, but it was survival. Every sigh, every silence, every change in someone's breath still triggers that ancient alarm. You live in constant translation, haunted by echoes of the child who thought harmony was earned through self-erasure. You became addicted to being understood because being misunderstood once meant danger. This is the unconscious wound, the origin of your sensitivity, the blueprint of your suffering. It's not your weakness, it's your defense mechanism fossilized into identity. But here's the paradox. The same sensitivity that once protected you now imprisons you. You don't just feel, you absorb. You don't just hear, you interpret. The world isn't attacking you. Your past is reenacting itself through every new voice. The people around you are just characters cast in your unfinished childhood play. And until you awaken, you'll keep reacting to them as if your safety still depends on their approval. But it doesn't anymore. You're not that child scanning the horizon for storms. You can unlearn this vigilance. You can unhook your worth from other people's moods. It starts with one decision: to stop confusing attention with affection, to stop mistaking control for care, to stop letting your past narrate your present. Whisper it so your younger self can finally hear it. Comment below, I am not my old wound. Because once you believe that, the story begins to rewrite itself. The past loses its script, and you, for the first time, begin to speak without fear that silence will punish you. Number 4, Jung's mirror. Reacting to shadows, not reality. You think you're responding to the world, but you're only ever responding to your own reflection in it. Every reaction, every burst of pain, every defensive thought, it's the echo of something deeper you haven't faced yet. Jung called it the shadow, the hidden part of the psyche that contains everything you deny, repress, and disown. You think others trigger you, but really they illuminate what you've buried. When you take things personally, you're not feeling the present. You're feeling the collision between your mask and your shadow. The persona, the version of you crafted to survive, is fragile, terrified of exposure. So when someone challenges you, disagrees, or simply doesn't mirror the image you want them to see, you experience it as rejection. But it's not rejection, it's revelation. The world is your mirror, not your judge. Every conflict is a reflection of your inner split. The anger you feel towards someone's arrogance might be your own suppressed confidence. The shame you feel when criticized might be the echo of your need to be perfect. The fear you feel when misunderstood is the ghost of the child who wasn't heard. You don't live in reality, you live in interpretation. You react not to what is, but to what your mind creates around what is. And in that illusion, you lose power. Because as long as you believe the shadows are real, you can't touch the light. Jung warned that until you confront the shadow, it will appear in your life as fate. That's why patterns repeat. People change faces, but the emotional script remains identical. Betrayal, misunderstanding, disapproval, silence. You aren't cursed, you're unconscious. The world keeps playing the same melody because you haven't learned to stop dancing to it. But here's the awakening. The moment you stop reacting and start observing, the mirror cracks. The projection collapses. What used to haunt you becomes transparent. You realize the pain was never in them. It was in the reflection, and in that stillness, something inside you begins to breathe again. Awareness. That's the threshold between who you were and who you could be. The next time someone's words sting, don't defend, don't explain. Just look inward and whisper, whose shadow am I really seeing? Because once you answer that, no one's reflection can ever own you again. Number 5, when empathy becomes self-destruction. You've mistaken empathy for love. You think feeling everything makes you kind, that absorbing their pain makes you good. But empathy, unchecked, is a slow suicide. You keep drowning in emotions that were never meant for you to carry. You call it compassion, but it's compulsion. The compulsion to fix, to heal, to prove your worth through sacrifice. Jung warned that empathy without boundaries turns into identification. You merge with the suffering of others until your own psyche dissolves. You no longer know where they end and you begin. Their sadness becomes your weather, their chaos your pulse, their silence your verdict. You confuse connection with contagion. You absorb everyone's wounds, thinking it makes you whole, but all it does is blur the edges of your own being. This is how empathy becomes a form of possession. You host the ghosts of other people's emotions, mistaking the haunting for purpose. And yet you wonder why you feel so heavy, so fragmented, so endlessly tired. Because every time you rescue someone from their darkness, you leave a part of yourself behind in the abyss. That's not empathy. That's self-abandonment wearing the mask of virtue. The truth is, you don't help people by drowning with them. You help by standing on the shore and reaching from strength, not sorrow. But your ego doesn't understand that. It feeds on the illusion of being needed. It tells you that your pain gives you meaning, that martyrdom is proof of your goodness. And so you bleed willingly, quietly, beautifully. But Jung's psychology reminds us that integration, not immersion, is the path to wholeness. True empathy is seeing without absorbing, caring without collapsing. You can witness another's suffering without becoming it. You can hold space without losing your own. And that's the transformation. When you realize that being sensitive doesn't mean being broken. It means learning to feel without surrendering to every emotion that passes through you. To stand firm in your own psychic center while the world trembles. When you finally understand this, empathy no longer destroys you. It strengthens you. You stop being a sponge for pain and become a mirror for healing. That's when the heart stops bleeding and starts seeing. Number 6, the awakening, understanding detachment and projection. There comes a moment when the noise finally begins to separate, when you stop mistaking every voice for your conscience. That's the beginning of awakening. For years, you reacted to everything because you believed feeling deeply meant being alive. But feeling everything isn't awareness. It's entanglement. Jung called true awareness individuation, the process of becoming whole by recognizing what belongs to you and what doesn't. Detachment is not indifference. It's precision. It's the ability to see the storm without drowning in it. You start to notice that most of your suffering comes not from what people do, but from what you interpret it to mean. Someone ignores you and you imagine rejection. Someone praises you and you mistake it for proof of worth. Both are illusions born from the same dependence. But detachment cuts through that fog. It teaches you to watch without translating, to feel without claiming ownership of every emotion that enters your field. You begin to understand that people's behavior reveals their psychology, not your value. You start to see projection as a universal dance of shadows, each person unknowingly showing you their inner architecture. You realize the world has been holding up a mirror, not a target. And when that truth lands, something inside you loosens. The compulsive need to fix, to explain, to defend. You see that silence can be understanding, that stillness can be strength. You learn to sit with discomfort without needing to rewrite it. This is detachment, not emotional distance, but emotional discipline. The ability to remain within yourself while the external world thrashes around you. It's the shift from, why are they doing this to me? To, what are they revealing about themselves? And in that single transformation, the cage of personal interpretation shatters. You begin to live not as a reaction, but as a reflection. Calm, grounded, aware. You repeat the mantra softly. I observe, I don't absorb. And you feel how it rewires your mind. You watch projections pass through you like shadows through light. You begin to sense the quiet power of neutrality, the kind that cannot be manipulated or broken. That is what Jung meant by awakening. Not escape from feeling, but mastery of it. The world still speaks, but now it no longer decides who you are. Number 7, how people's judgments reveal them, not you. Every opinion they've ever had of you was an autobiography disguised as truth. Every insult, every compliment, every whisper behind your back, it was never about you. It was always a mirror of their inner architecture, their unspoken desires, their private wars. Jung wrote that, what you see in others is the reflection of what you carry within. When someone calls you selfish, they're often choking on their own unmet needs. When they call you arrogant, they're staring at their own unclaimed power. When they call you weak, they're condemning their own vulnerability. You've spent your life trying to correct other people's projections, fighting shadows as if they were facts. You shrink when they disapprove, inflate when they admire, not realizing you're just reacting to the theater of their unconscious. People can only perceive you from the level of awareness they live in. The blind will call light offensive. The numb will call depth dramatic. The shallow will call authenticity strange. Their words are coordinates of their consciousness, not measurements of your worth. You don't have to keep translating their limitations into your self-image. The moment you stop taking their reactions personally, you start seeing through them. You begin to observe humanity as a psychological landscape, each person revealing themselves through judgment, their tone, their impatience, their praise, all data, all mirrors. You stop trying to be understood because you realize most people aren't listening to you at all. They're only hearing the echo of their own fears bouncing off your existence. That's why you must detach, not from people, but from their projections. You can listen without inhaling, see without absorbing, understand without identifying. That is true psychological maturity, when you stop being defined by the noise of others' unhealed selves. The world becomes quiet not because people change, but because you no longer internalize their storms. You start to feel an almost eerie calm, a kind of inner invisibility, not absence but sovereignty. You repeat it softly, like armor forming around your consciousness. Their words describe them, not me. And in that moment, you transcend the battlefield. You see that judgment is confession and silence is power. The world keeps talking, but for the first time, you're no longer the subject, you're the mirror. Number 8, reclaiming boundaries, becoming emotionally untouchable. You've spent years dissolving into other people's emotions, but now you begin to sense the edges of your own skin again. Boundaries are not walls. They are membranes of consciousness, deciding what enters and what stays out. Jung called this the formation of the self, the emergence of an inner authority that no longer seeks permission to exist. You start to realize that peace is not given to you by others. It's maintained by the clarity of what you allow. Every time you refuse to internalize someone's chaos, you reclaim a fragment of power that was once scattered across countless interactions. The world still hums with noise, but it no longer pierces. You feel the difference between sympathy and surrender, between connection and collapse. You begin to see that compassion doesn't mean availability, it means presence without absorption. You stop explaining yourself to be understood. You stop defending your quiet. You stop translating your worth into language others can approve. This is what it means to become emotionally untouchable, not cold but coherent. You stand in your own psychological gravity, and suddenly everything else begins to orbit differently. The manipulator loses access. The critic loses aim. The guilt that used to anchor itself in your chest slides off like rain from stone. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And this is that privilege in motion. You are no longer an echo. You are a frequency. You feel the sacred neutrality that comes when nothing external defines your internal. The world can love you, hate you, misunderstand you. It changes nothing at the core, because at the core, there is stillness. Whisper it, not as defense, but declaration. I stand within myself, unshaken. That phrase is not rebellion, it's alignment. It's the psyche remembering its borders. It's the heart no longer volunteering for every war. You learn that power doesn't shout, it simply doesn't move when provoked. That's the new silence you live in now. Not emptiness, but mastery. And from that silence, something ancient begins to stir. The shadow that once ruled you, now ready to be met face to face. Number 9, the shadow integration, confronting the part of you that needs validation. You've built your life around mirrors, and now it's time to turn them all toward yourself. The shadow you've spent years avoiding isn't some dark entity. It's the child within you who still believes love must be earned. Jung said the shadow isn't evil, it's simply what the ego refuses to see. And what you've refused to see is your hunger, to be chosen, seen, understood. You call it sensitivity, but it's starvation. You crave reflection because you've mistaken acknowledgement for existence. Every compliment became oxygen, every silence became death. But here's the truth you've been running from. The one who needs validation is not your enemy. That part of you is sacred because it reveals where you abandoned yourself first. You've sought healing in the eyes of others when the only eyes that could ever free you were your own. Integration means turning toward that hungry self and saying, I see you. You can rest now. It means holding the parts of you that begged for approval and teaching them the language of inner approval. Jung's work was never about becoming pure, it was about becoming whole. You cannot transcend your need for validation until you love the one who still needs it. So you sit with your shadow. You don't argue, you don't judge, you listen. You feel the ache of all the moments you twisted yourself to be loved, all the words you swallowed to be accepted. You realize that your craving for validation was never weakness. It was the psyche's attempt to find home in a world that never offered it. And now you are that home. The moment you stop fighting the shadow and start embracing it, something miraculous happens. The hunger quiets. You no longer chase mirrors because you've become your own reflection. You whisper it, not to the world, but to your own heart. I am no longer begging for reflection. I am the source of light. And for the first time, you understand what Jung meant by integration. It's not killing the darkness, but giving it a voice, a seat at the table, a place within you. Because once you can hold both the ache and the awareness, you become untouchable. The shadow no longer hunts you, it serves you. Number 10, the liberation, the untouchable mind. And now the silence feels different. It isn't emptiness anymore. It's space. Space where your thoughts can move without colliding, where the voices of others fade into distant echoes. You no longer bend beneath perception. You observe it like weather, temporary, shifting, powerless against the mountain you have become. Jung spoke of the self as the union of opposites, the meeting point of shadow and light. You are standing there now between the two, whole for the first time. You no longer need to protect yourself from words because they can no longer enter without your permission. You have learned the rarest skill of all, to witness without absorbing, to feel without fracturing, to love without losing form. You've transcended the fragile architecture of approval. Their judgments drift by like clouds. Your worth no longer depends on the weather. You've turned pain into perception, chaos into clarity. The mirror that once imprisoned you has shattered, and the light pouring through it is yours. You finally understand. You were never meant to be invincible. You were meant to be integrated. Invincibility resists, but integration absorbs and transforms. Now when life throws shadows at you, you don't flinch. You illuminate them. You no longer ask, why me? But instead, what is this showing me? And that question changes everything. It turns every wound into wisdom, every loss into revelation. This is the untouchable mind, not armored, but aware. The world still speaks, but it no longer commands. You are rooted in the quiet gravity of your own understanding. Say it aloud, not as defiance, but as declaration. I am untouchable in truth. Let it echo through your psyche like a bell. Let it replace the noise that once defined you. Because this is what Jung's philosophy was always pointing toward. The rebirth of the conscious self, aware of its shadows, free from their chains. You are not healed because the world stopped hurting you. You are healed because it no longer owns you. You've become what they could never comprehend. Still, sovereign, awake. And if this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this is just the beginning of your awakening.